So let's take a look now at USMT, the User State Migration Tool. Now, as I've said in a previous lecture, one of the things that sometimes we have to do is we have to migrate users' data. Okay, so this is a scenario in which maybe you've got a user who is getting a new computer. Maybe they got an older computer. Let's say they've got an older computer running Vista or Windows 7 or even 8, and instead of upgrading, we are getting them a new computer. Maybe it's older, and we need to migrate their stuff from that one computer, the old computer, to the new computer. And of course, that's going to be one of the big things that a person's going to be asking you. Is they're going to be excited about getting a new computer probably, but their concern is that when they get to this new computer, is all of their stuff going to be there, right? So we've got to make that happen. Now, that type of scenario is called a side-by-side migration. When you have two computers, the old computer, new computer, and you're moving it over, that's going to be called a side-by-side. Now, there's also what's known as a wipe and load. But one thing I want to clarify with wipe and load, the thing that pops up in everybody's head when I say wipe and load is you're going to be wiping the hard drive clean of a computer, and that's actually not true. A wipe and load scenario is where a person is not getting a new computer. They're going to keep the existing computer that they've already got. Let's say maybe it's running Windows 7, and we're going to put Windows 10 on it, but we decided not to do an in-place upgrade, maybe because of some existing issues that Windows 7 computer had. We don't want those existing issues to make their ways into Windows 10. So instead, we're gonna wipe it off and load Windows 10. So with a wipe and load, you can format the hard drive, but actually you can also just have the operating system wiped away, program files wiped away, all of that, and then install Windows 10 and then put their stuff back on it. Of course, you need to back their stuff up first, and that's what we're going to be looking at here. We're going to be looking at a way to do that in USMT called scan state. You can even do this thing called a hard link migration, where essentially what we do is we back their stuff up on their very hard drive, and then when we wipe away Windows 7 or whatever operating system, we put Windows 10 on there, the files are already there. So there's a couple options there. Alternatively, you can always back up their stuff to somewhere else. You can back it up across the network, you can back it up to a flash drive or an external hard drive or something like that, and then restore it back later. Okay, so the first thing I want to look at is how do we get into the environment where we can actually use this USMT utility. Now, first thing to know there, it's command line. So it's not a graphical tool, it's a command line tool. Okay, and the way you get it is by downloading the Windows ADK, the Windows Assessment and Deployment Toolkit, which I've shown you previously. Okay, so once that's installed on your computer, you should be able to, in Windows 10, click on Start, scroll down to Windows Kits, and there's this thing called the Deployment and Imaging Tools Environment. Now, I love the name. The name sounds very powerful. Like when I first heard of it, I was like, okay, this is going to be this real powerful graphical tool, but really it's just command line. Okay, so I'm going to right click this, and I'm going to go and click More and run this as an administrator, because some of the things I am going to be doing is going to require administrative privileges. So I'm going to run as administrator. I'm going to click Yes. It's going to bring me to a command line environment. All right, I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit so it's a little clearer for you. All right, so you're going to notice that we're going to start out in the Windows Kits folder, Assessment Deployment Toolkit, and to find the USMT, I am going to have to go back one folder. So I'm going to type cd ... which is change directory. It's going to take me back one folder, and then I'm going to type dir. And you're going to notice that the USMT folder is listed there. Okay, so I'm going to go into that USMT folder. I'm going to type cd space and then the letter U, and then I'm going to hit Tab because command prompt will support an autocomplete for you. So I'm going to hit Enter, and I'm now inside that USMT folder. I'm going to type dir, and you're going to notice that there are three versions there: AMD 64, ARM 64, x86. So AMD 64 is for 64-bit processors, Intel or AMD, not just AMD. And then ARM is for the ARM-based processors. And then finally, the x64 is for 32-bit processors. Now, in this machine, I'm using 64-bit. So I'm going to go into cd space AMD 64, hit Enter, and then I'm going to type dir. And you're going to notice there's a bunch of files here. but the files that I care about have an exe extension. So I'm going to type dir star.exe. This is going to show me just the exe files. And I want you to kind of focus in on two of these. The first is scan state and the other is load state. So the first thing I want you to remember here is that scan state will let me back up user information and load state will let me restore it. So obviously here, if I want to back everything up, I need to do a scan state. Okay, so one piece of advice I want to give you, and you're going to hear me say this a lot as we look at commands throughout the course, is that it's a great idea for you to pull up Microsoft's knowledge base article on commands. Microsoft has a knowledge base article on just about every single command that they have, and it gives you some great information on how to use the command. It gives you examples. It tells you what the switches are, all of that good stuff. So I want you to get in the habit of doing that. This is also going to help you prepare for the exam and all that stuff if you're familiar with being able to look things up while you're studying and while you're using commands. Okay, so I'm going to do that now. I'm going to pull up the web browser here and just go to any search engine you want and then type scan state into the search engine. All right, and the article I'm going to go with is this one right here talking about the syntax. This is the scan state syntax right here. Talks about all the switches and how to use the command and all that. So this is a pretty big article, but I want to hone in on certain things. One thing it shows you here is how to use this command. It even has some good examples for us on how to use the command. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do in this command is I'm actually going to type just the word scan state. All right, and then the first thing that you're going to notice that they want me to enter in here when I'm running this command is they want me to specify the location of where I'm backing data up to. So if I was backing up data to a server, okay, if I was going to back up data to a server, then I would put in / the name of the server, server name, / you'll notice it carried over here, and then whatever the name of the shared folder is that's on the server. Maybe the shared folder is called backup or whatever. So you could put that in if you wanted to. Now in the case of me here in my little lab environment that I've got, I'm just going to back up to my C drive. So I'm just going to say C:/backup. Plus, if you were going to do a hard link migration and you were going to back up directly to your own hard drive, this would be the way you would do it. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to type /i. I means include. Okay, now if we look at the knowledge base articles on some of these switches that we have, here it is. So when you look at the /i switch, you're going to notice that this is going to include certain types of files. These files are called XML files. Okay, now there are 3 main XML files that can contain information about the stuff that's going to be migrated. Now it's all wonderful and great to use scan state to say I want to back all the person's stuff up, but one thing that's got to happen is scan state's got to document where all that stuff goes so that when you go and run load state, it can load it in the proper spots. It's got to record registry information, file locations, all of that. So there are 3 main files. One of them is called the MIG app file. Let me just up the font here. MIG app.xml. This is going to contain application settings for your user. So it'll have application settings, it'll have application data, registry values, all of that's going to get stored in there. The next file is called MIG docs.xml. This is going to contain doc information, doc settings and locations. All right. And then finally, we have what is called MIG user. MIG user is going to be your user settings. Now, I'll tell you that that's usually going to get backed up anyway, so that's not really a problem. That's going to back up your registry values for your user account, your wallpaper settings, your appearance settings, all of that stuff that you like in your environment. It's going to back all that up. Okay, so this is for user settings. And that's what's going to get backed up there. Now, there's also another file called config.xml. Okay, and there's actually a switch you're going to use called /genconfig. That file doesn't automatically get created. That file you have to create using the genconfig switch. Now that file, what it does is it allows you to exclude things if you want. Okay, so for example, if I don't want to back up the user's terabyte MP3 collection or something, I can actually generate that file and edit the file and basically specify what I don't want to include there. Okay, so that's how that file is. So if I want to exclude items, I can create that file and I can use that file if I want. Okay, so you're going to notice that here's the genconfig switch right here that you could use, and that's going to generate the config.xml. Okay, so that's what your /i is going to do. All right. So if I want to do that right now, zoom in on it, and I'm going to type mig app.xml. And by the way, this is not case sensitive, even though I did capitalize that. And I want to include mig docs. So I'm going to say /i : mig docs.xml. And then I want to include mig user. Now keep in mind, I actually could leave this one off if I want. I just want to type them all out to show you, because this is going to get added anyway. You'd have to exclude it if you didn't want it. So there's your 3 files, and then you can see the syntax there. All right, I've added them with separating them with the space. All right, each one. Now the next thing I can do is I can add some additional switches. For one, I could add a /o. That's going to overwrite any files that are already in the c:/backup folder. Okay, another switch I can add that's very helpful is the /vse switch. The VSE is volume shadow copy. What that's going to do is allow me to back up any data that is currently in use. This is very good if you've got a scenario where there might be some of the files being used on the hard drive right now while you're backing up. Now, if you were doing this through Windows PE and not on a live computer, then you wouldn't need that switch. But if you're doing it on a live computer, you're definitely going to want to use that VSE switch. Okay. Now, another thing is this thing will back up your encrypted files as well. But if you were perhaps maybe not an admin and couldn't back up their encrypted files, you'd either A, have to get them to decrypt their files so you could back those up, or B, you could also say /EFS skip, and that would skip any encrypted files. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to say on this is when I hit enter on this, it's going to start backing up the user's information, as you can see here. But while that's backing up the user's information, I want to point a couple of other things out here. Okay.